One of the things that made people reconsider Ainsworth's very mother-centric theory was when they started doing cross-cultural work. What they found was that if you go to Northern Europe, especially North Germany, Scandinavia, Denmark, places like that, there's quite a high proportion of anxious avoidant A babies. Here's a paper published by Grossman and colleagues in 1980 about the number of children considered as secure in Germany. It was far fewer than those from the US. And this seemed to have been driven by the high proportion of children who were categorized as anxious avoidant. Now, does this mean that all of these mothers in Northern Europe don't enjoy contact with their babies? No, that doesn't seem right. When the researchers, who themselves were from this area, started talking to parents and delving in, what they found was that the cultural norm there was that if your baby's able to sit up, then they can pretty much be independent, handle things on their own. So the practice was, once the babies were sitting up, well, just sit them up, put some toys in front of them, and then leave them alone. The idea was that when they cry, they're tired and they need to go to bed. In this context, babies learn. I'm not going to cry. If I cry, she's going to come and put me to bed, so I'm just going to stay cool. You put them in a strange situation, of course they act anxious avoidant from Mary Ainsworth's perspective, but it's just because they're very used to being left alone. They always know their mother's going to come back, and they know that if they cry, they might get put to bed. And they don't want that because they got a whole bunch of cool new toys to play with. In a different culture, the strange situation test can mean something completely different again. This is reinforced when you look at what people discovered in Japan. This is a paper published by Takahashi in 1986. They started administering strange situation tests and found a large proportion, like 32% of the babies there, were categorized as anxious ambivalent, C babies, while none were categorized as anxious avoidant babies. What does this mean? Japanese mothers are all inconsistent? No, that can't be right. Again, when they delved deeper, it turned out, especially at that time, it may have changed a bit now, the most common sleeping pattern for the first 2 years of life was for a Japanese infant to sleep with his mother. If you take a baby who spends all of his time with his mother, including sleep time, and you put him in a strange situation, it's not just a strange situation for him. It's a monumental tragedy like he's never dealt with before. Mom has left the room. Of course he freaks out. Of course he vomits. So the context, the expectations, determine how the strange situation should be interpreted. Mary Ainsworth put everything as if all mothers were the same and cultural expectations were the same, and that's simply not the case. Here's a paper published by Rothbaum and colleagues in 2000, stating that countries such as Japan view a mother's sensitivity towards her child, her competence, and the secure base that she provides for her baby very differently to those viewed by Mary Ainsworth. She also neglected the fact that all relationships are a two-way street. The baby's characteristics are just as important as the mother's. If you have a baby who's very difficult, who gets easily overstimulated, doesn't like face-to-face contact, what would be the most sensitive thing to do? Leave him alone. Don't force him into a whole lot of face-to-face contact. But if Mary Ainsworth's watching, she might say, look, not very much face-to-face contact. That's not a very sensitive mother. But in fact, you might be doing what's best for the baby. Now, you might think that these patterns of attachment are only used for classifying babies' attachment style and their interactions with their mother. Patterns of attachment observed during early childhood can stay with us all the way through our adolescence to adulthood. So what's your attachment style?